The notification that ended my career arrived while my feet were in the sand, but the legal clause that would end theirs had been sitting in my contract, waiting for 3 long years. It was my 3rd day of vacation, my first real break after an entire decade of grinding. The sun was setting over the water, painting the sky in colours I'd almost forgotten existed. That's when my phone buzzed, not a call, a direct message from the head of human resources herself. It read, "Urgent situation. Need you to log in immediately. Client emergency." I stared at the screen. I'd submitted my PTO request 6 months in advance. It was approved by the same HR department now pinging me. I took a deep breath of the salty air and typed my reply. Calm, professional, unmovable. I am currently on approved protected leave. I will be fully available to address any and all matters on my scheduled return date. The response took less than an hour to land, and it wasn't a reply to my message. It was an official termination letter sent to my personal email. The subject line, notification of employment status change. The body was a masterpiece of corporate cruelty. My position was terminated, effective immediately. My severance package, which I was entitled to after 10 years of service, was revoked. The stated reason? Gross insubordination and refusal to perform critical duties. I read it twice. Then I let out a single sharp laugh that startled a seagull nearby. They had actually fired me for not working while I was on vacation. The absurdity was almost beautiful. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I placed the phone face down on the table, took a long sip of my drink, and watched the last sliver of sun disappear below the horizon, because they had just made a multi-million-dollar mistake and they had no idea. You see, I learned a hard lesson about this company years ago. I watched them do this to other people, good people. People who gave their lives to the job only to be discarded the moment they became inconvenient. I saw a man walked out the week his daughter had major surgery. I saw a woman denied bereavement leave because the paperwork wasn't submitted through the proper channel. This company didn't have a heart, it had a spreadsheet, and I decided long before this moment on the beach that I would never be just another line item they could delete without consequence. So, 3 years ago, during the chaos of a massive corporate merger, I made my move. The legal department was overwhelmed, buried under thousands of pages of contracts that needed signing before a hard deadline. In that panic, I quietly inserted a single powerful clause into my own updated employment agreement. I hired the most feared employment attorney in the city, a woman named Elena Vance, to draft it. She was a ghost in the corporate world, a name that made HR directors go pale. Clause 9D was a piece of legal poetry. It stated, clearly and without loopholes, that if the company terminated my employment at any point during a period of approved, documented paid time off, they would be in immediate breach of contract. That breach triggered 3 automatic penalties. First, immediate payment of my full severance package. Second, an additional financial penalty equal to my base salary for 6 months. And third, and this was the real genius, a mandatory disclosure of the breach to the company's board of directors and its audit committee. For a publicly traded corporation, that last part was a nuclear option. The overworked legal team, rushing to get the merger finalised, rubber-stamped my entire contract without a second look. Clause 9D was just another line in a 100-page document. They forgot about it the second they filed it away. But I never forgot. I remembered it every time I saw the company's true colours. I remembered it as I built my career, knowing that one day they might come for me too. So when that termination email hit my inbox, I didn't feel anger. I felt a profound, chilling calm. The trap had been set years ago, and they had just sprung it. I opened my laptop, connected to the resort's Wi-Fi, and drafted a 2-word email to Elena Vance. The subject line, "It's time." The body contained only the termination letter as an attachment. I hit send. Her reply came back in minutes. Acknowledged, do not engage. The process has begun. And with that, I closed my laptop. My work was done. The rest was in the hands of a professional. Back at the company's sleek headquarters, they must have been patting themselves on the back. Another potential problem solved with a cold email. They followed up with automated messages about returning my keycard and a link to a meaningless exit interview survey. The arrogance was staggering. They were so confident in their power, so utterly blind to the weapon they themselves had signed into law. Elena worked with terrifying efficiency. Within 24 hours, a formal notice of contractual breach was delivered. This wasn't a lawsuit, not yet. It was something more psychologically potent. It was a legal subpoena wrapped in a warning. She sent it directly to the company's general counsel. She carbon copied the lead partner at the most aggressive litigation firm in the state. The document laid out in forensic detail the violation of Clause 9D. It included the PTO approval records, the time-stamped HR message sent to my phone on vacation, and the termination email. It was airtight. The first sign of panic was a terse one-word email from a junior corporate lawyer. Received. Then the silence broke. Internal email chains began to multiply. Subject lines evolved from contract query to urgent legal exposure. Someone, somewhere, frantically pulled the digital file of my contract from the merger archives. And there it was, Clause 9D in black and white, with all their signatures on it. Elena forwarded me a screenshot. It was from an internal private Slack channel for the HR leadership team. One person had written, "Can someone confirm if Clause 9D in the Monroe Agreement is active? This can't be right." A senior manager responded, "Do not discuss this here, take it offline immediately." But the message was sent. The seed of dread was planted. The panic was now contagious. Unsurprisingly, a meeting request appeared in my inbox. The sender was the general counsel. The invite list included the head of HR, a board legal observer, and the CEO. They wanted to discuss the situation and find an amicable path forward. I accepted the invite. For the Zoom call, I kept my camera off and my microphone muted. I was just a spectator now. Elena's camera was on. She was dressed for a courtroom. The CEO, a man named David, joined last. He offered a tight, practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you all for making the time," he began, his voice a careful blend of authority and forced warmth. Elena didn't let him finish. "Shall we dispense with the preliminaries?" she said, her voice flat and cool. "I've shared my screen." There, displayed for everyone in the virtual boardroom, was the contract. Clause 9D was highlighted in bright yellow. Below it, in a damning timeline, were all the documents proving the breach. She read the clause aloud. Her voice was clear, deliberate, and devoid of any emotion. Termination of the employee during a period of documented and approved paid time off constitutes a breach of contract, triggering immediate payout of full severance, an additional penalty equal to 6 months' salary, and mandates disclosure of the breach to the board's audit committee. She let the words hang in the digital silence. Then she continued. "The breach is not a matter of debate, it is a documented fact. Your HR department terminated my client while he was on protected leave. The financial penalties are now due. Furthermore, per the clause, you are obligated to report this breach to your board's audit committee in your next quarterly disclosures." The CEO shifted in his chair. Now let's be reasonable. There was clearly a misunderstanding. No one in leadership was aware this clause was still active. It was a relic from the merger. Elena didn't blink. Awareness is irrelevant. Your signature is on the document. Your company is bound by its terms. This is not a negotiation about the breach. It is a conversation about how you will fulfill your contractual obligations and mitigate the additional reputational damage that will occur when this is disclosed to shareholders. Then she advanced to the next slide. It was an internal memo marked confidential that her network had obtained. It was a risk assessment, hastily prepared by their own legal team after they discovered Clause 9D. The memo warned that a preliminary audit suggested similar protective language might exist in other legacy contracts from the same merger period. The estimated total exposure, it said, could reach into the tens of millions of dollars. The CEO's face lost all its colour. The board observer leaned forward, his brow furrowed. The general counsel stared blankly at the screen. The silence that followed was the most expensive sound I have ever heard. The meeting ended shortly after. There were no resolutions, only hollow statements about needing to consult internally. But the damage was done. The fear was in the room. In the days that followed, the dominoes began to fall. The head of HR who authorised my termination was suddenly placed on administrative leave. The company announced an internal review of all senior-level employment contracts. And then the unavoidable happened. Because the company was publicly traded, they were legally required to disclose material risks to investors. Elena formally filed the breach notice, forcing their hand. In their next quarterly report, buried in the dense legalese of the risk factors section on page 22, a new paragraph appeared. It read, "The company is currently engaged in a dispute regarding certain legacy employment agreement provisions, which, if resolved unfavourably, could result in material financial liability. They didn't name me, they didn't quote the clause directly, but every analyst on Wall Street knew what that kind of language meant. It meant instability. It meant poor governance. It meant risk. The company's stock price dipped that week. It was a small dip, but a symbolic one. Then the friendly emails started flooding my inbox. They came from intermediaries, from conflict resolution specialists. The tone was suddenly warm, respectful, almost pleading. They talked about my incredible legacy and their desire to honour my contributions with a revised generous separation package. I didn't respond to a single one. I forwarded them all to Elena. Her responses were not emails. They were formal payment demands, with deadlines and late fees clearly itemised. But here is the final chapter, the part of the story they never anticipated. While they were drowning in their own legal and PR nightmare, I was already building my next act. Using the substantial upfront payment from the settlement Elena secured, I quietly bought a partnership stake in a small, agile consulting firm. A firm that was everything my old company wasn't: ethical, strategic, and human. By the time my former CEO was facing uncomfortable questions from the board, I was already in my new office, a modest space with a door that closed and a view I owned. They thought by firing me, they had written the end of my story. What they actually did was activate the escape plan I had built for myself the day I stopped believing in their empty promises. They tried to delete me from their spreadsheet. In return, I made my name a permanent line item in their budget under cost of doing business. If you've ever felt undervalued, if you've ever seen the corporate machine treat people as disposable, then you understand why this isn't just a story about revenge. It's a story about foresight. It's about building your own leverage long before you ever need it. It's a reminder that sometimes the most powerful move is not to fight the system in the moment, but to quietly rewire it in your favour years in advance. If you want more deep dives into real stories of strategy, justice, and navigating the complexities of the modern workplace, make sure you're part of this channel. Hit that like button and subscribe this channel. Your support is what allows us to find and share these powerful lessons. Thanks for listening.